On the news front in this week's report, we have an update on a movement to reopen for-hire fishing in Massachusetts, modification of parking and access at the Cape Cod Canal, and an update on access in Rhode Island. And over on the fishing side of things, we have haddock, striped bass, blackfish, trout, smallmouth bass, and even an odd pollock landed inside Long Island Sound. Check it out.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Hi there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast for New England. And to start things off, I'm going to give you a couple of COVID-19 related updates as far as how it's affecting us on the fishing side of things. Going to begin with a letter filed up in Massachusetts by a joint group which includes the Recreational Fishing Alliance, American Saltwater Guides Association, Stellwagen Bank Charter Boat Association, the Northeast Charter Boat Captains Association, and the Cape Cod Charter Boat Association. Now, the letter was filed on April 30th requesting that saltwater fishing guides and charter boat captains be allowed to resume operations at the time of Phase 1 reopening of the state. Letter was filed with Governor Charles Baker, Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. This was filed in response to the official closure of the for-hire industry in Massachusetts, which I reported to you last week. You can get all of these updates, both stories, right now at thefisherman.com. And then also up in Massachusetts, this week's fishing reports for Cape Cod and the islands include a bunch of references to the canal. Herring have been in the runs for a while now, and anglers really seem to set out in the last week or so in the big ditch to see who could score that first large migratory fish of the year. Now, while for the most part, I didn't hear of anything over, say, maybe 15 pounds or so landed, the writing is on the wall for a good run this season with lots of small fish and herring around. But with concerns over COVID-19 and subsequent social distancing requirements in place, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers made an announcement reminding visitors that, quote, "There is reduced parking at most recreational areas. Please leave traffic cones in place. If you find a parking lot is full, we ask that you try another lot or return at a less busy time." This means that you're going to notice at a bunch of the common or most of the parking spots on the canal, every other spot is going to have a big orange road cone in it. Now, I didn't see any reference to any penalties for removing those cones. I would strongly advise against touching them in any way, shape, or form. You know, all it's going to take to potentially shut down a parking lot or even worse, shut down access to the entire canal is one bad egg, so do not be that person. And of course, check out thefisherman.com for all the details on this story. And then in Rhode Island, I have a bit of a positive update, some good news. The Rhode Island Division of Fish and Wildlife's Outdoor Education Department announced on its Facebook page this week that the fishing day restriction was now eliminated. Specifically, they stated that at the beginning of the season, the DEM implemented a system that restricted the days when anglers could fish based on their last name. Now, as of Monday, May 4th, this restriction has been lifted. Anglers should still follow social distancing practices and maintain safe distance of at least 6 feet from other anglers and avoid groupings no more than 5 persons. And of course, if you arrive at a fishing spot and find the crowds are forming or the parking lot is full, please leave and choose a different location or return at another time of the day. Now, I also got word that there might be a removal of the governor's stay-at-home order very soon. Now, whether or not that means that anglers from out of state can enter Rhode Island to fish, I do not know. Have not gotten clarification on that. I'll stay on top of it, of course. And I will, of course, post updates at thefisherman.com, and the details exactly on this story itself can be found right now at thefisherman.com. And I got one more thing to bring to you here before we get into the report. I want to direct you to another video by Fisherman contributor Jerry Audette of InDeepOutdoors.com. Now, quick side note, Jerry is going to be one of our weekly surf fishing report sources, which Dave Anderson will be calling every week. And the surf fishing report began with the May issue. It's in print as well as online in the reports. Of course, if you want to access those reports from Jerry, those will only be included for subscribers in the print and digital editions. So, another reason to subscribe to the Fisherman magazine. Now, back to the video that Jerry posted. This time around, he talks about the use of headlights, specifically with a red filter or lens. Now, Jerry and I are pretty much on track with common feelings on this subject about the use of headlights, neck lights, white lights, red lights, and so on in the surf at night. So give a look right now. I've got a direct link to his video in the upper right hand corner of the screen. Give it a watch, and when you come back over, or on his post in the comments, let us know some of your thoughts. Are we alone in our feelings here? Are we pretty common with it? As I talked to Jerry about it this week, white headlight use in the surf is a huge pet peeve of mine, but how do you feel about this subject? Okay, I'm going to begin this report, this week's report, up in Massachusetts, where the haddock season is underway. It opened a couple weeks ago, April 15th to be specific. And I was talking to Chris Valstakis of Mandolin Charters. Chris has written a couple articles for us. He's on the Humminbird Minn Kota pro staff, really good angler. He sails out of Newburyport. And Chris said that he and his girlfriend have been fishing Jeffrey's Ledge of late, and they've been doing really well. On one recent trip, Chris was out and they had a 4-person limit in about an hour and a half. Now, I've said it before, but haddock are perhaps my favorite local fish to eat. They are excellent. Very similar, but a bit more mild than a cod. I'm not a big fishy fish type person when I'm eating, but nonetheless, haddock are excellent. So once those Massachusetts restrictions on for hires get lifted, be sure to call one of our advertisers or give Chris a buzz and see if you can get out on that awesome haddock bite. Let's see, moving down into Rhode Island. Talked to local surfcaster Gil Bell a couple of times this week. Gil and I talk throughout the season, and he said he's been finding some mixed results in the Rhode Island surf. He's finding fish one day, and then he goes back the next day, and they're all gone. So, hey, you know, that's kind of the way it is in the spring. The fish are on the move. They're following on bait, but I have been hearing of pretty decent reports from Watch Hill all the way down to Point Judith, South County beaches, as well as inside the ponds. Nothing huge. You probably top out 20, 22, 24 inches, but nonetheless some very good action to speak of. And we hopefully will have ease of restrictions on accessing those beaches very soon, which will set us up for a very good late May bite in the surf in Rhode Island. Sticking with Rhode Island, I also talked to TJ Kopecki this week. He didn't have a chance to shoot a video, unfortunately, but he did want to pass along a report of increased striped bass activity on his last couple of outings. That's a very good thing to hear. Specifically, he said the Warren and Barrington rivers have been very good in the evenings, with fish to that 30-inch class being landed. I also got word of some blitzes of really small bass out in the main bay waters. Anglers basically just finding the schools of birds by boat and getting in on blitzes of micro bass already. And if you're looking for a boat to chase those striped bass, Steigercraft builds boats by the same people that fish our waters, and that's why serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast. Visit Steigercraft.com for a dealer near you. Then moving on down into Connecticut, heard from BJ Kogut. He checked in as he dropped his boat into his slip this week, and hey, while he was out, he figured why not take a few minutes to see if there's any fish around. So he had his kids with him, of course, and Luca was first on the board with a small striped bass landed in the lower Connecticut River on a rubber shad and jig combo. It's a small fish nonetheless, but a good start, and I fully expect BJ and his boys to get into some cow bass before too long. Next up, Mike Roy of Reelcast Charters checked in once again as he got another very timely video for spring striped bass. Let's take a look and see what he has to say.
Thanks, Toby. It's starting to feel a lot like spring, and that means springtime striped bass fishing. I'm excited. And in my newest YouTube video on Reelcast Charters, I'm talking about one of the most effective ways to catch springtime striped bass anywhere on the East Coast, and that is fishing a 7-inch soft plastic lure. Right here, this is a 7.5-inch Sluggo, one of the all-time top producers for striped bass. Check out my YouTube video. Back to you, Toby.
Thanks, Mike. perfect timing on the sluggos as I finally got out into the surf myself this week. I've had plenty of setbacks and excuses, but I just said, you know what, I'm getting out there, I'm gonna hit the surf, and I found some really cooperative striped bass feeding on herring near one of the runs that dumps directly into Long Island Sound. I had hits on a whole variety of lures, glide baits, red fins, Danny plugs, but the most productive lure for the night was a 9-inch sluggo fished on a weightless swim bait hook. Now the fish weren't very big, low 20-inch class at best, but they were aggressively feeding on those herring, probably combination of the cool water and a large food source in front of them. I had waves of herring coming past me the whole time I was there. Very good action, and very happy to finally have the monkey off my back and have the first striper of the season. Now we got to look for some bigger fish. Then moving west, Matthew Casamassima sent me an email on Sunday with a picture of a 22-inch pollock landed by Calvin the Calzone while scup fishing in Long Island Sound. Now, initially, I assumed that the picture was from last season, but no, Matt confirmed it was actually this weekend. They did really, really well on the scup. They were fishing Oyster Bay, if I remember correctly, and then right in the mix, a random pollock pops up. So it's really cool. You don't hear a whole lot of pollock, things like that inside the sound, but hey, maybe this is a result of fewer boats getting out, draggers not being able to get out, what have you, and hey, maybe we're going to have a pollock run in the sound this year. I will definitely keep you posted if I hear of any more catches. And I got one more salty report before we switch gears and head over to Sweetwater. Blackfish season closed in Connecticut with the end of April, but as usual, it went out with a bang. Everybody I heard or I spoke to that went out last week on the nicer days did quite well. And my buddy John Frione really went out on a bang. He had a couple of friends in town. They had a banner day. I think it was on Wednesday. They got a bunch of fish over 8 pounds, including the first double digit that I got confirmation of this spring in Connecticut at 10.175 pounds. Now, what makes the catch even more unbelievable is if you look closely at the photo, when John landed the blackfish, it had not just his hook in its mouth, but the jig and a broken leader from another angler. So I guess this was a case where the big one did get away for a short time, but then eventually it was caught. So cool story. You just never know what's going to happen with that next fish that you catch. All right, switching gears, gonna head on over to freshwater fishing. Heard from Thomas Biersek this week. He said he hit up Southford Falls in Connecticut with his son, brother, and nephew, and they had some really good action. No doubt a product of all of the heavy stocking the state of Connecticut has been doing this spring. Big thank you to you guys. Well, Thomas's son Jackson added 2 more fish to his Connecticut DEP Youth Fishing Passport Challenge this year with a brook and a brown trout. Congratulations on that, Jackson. But not to be outdone, Jackson's cousin John followed up a short time later with a really nice brook trout of his own. Now, word is that all the fish were landed on dilly worms, and you know what? That is just about a surefire way to get the kids onto a good bite no matter what time of the season and what the species is that you are targeting. And then last up this week, heard from Fisherman contributor Nick Canaris. Just before I came out to shoot this video, was just finishing up my notes, Nick sent me an email as he took a couple rides up to Candlewood Lake in Connecticut this week. Now, Nick is he's not a big bass fisherman, but nonetheless, he's heard of a good bite going up there, and he confirmed it as the smallie action was excellent. All the action that he had, he said, came on jigs, fish in about 6 to 10 feet of water, but got a lot of really good sized spring smallmouth bass. And one thing he noted, as I'm sure if you're familiar with Nick's writing and his photos, he gets in on the crappie here in the Connecticut River. And of course, he found them when he was on Candlewood Lake. He said that they were moving shallow, probably to spawn, and he landed some really, really fat fish. As you can see here, some of them looked like they were ready to explode. So nice job. I've been hearing a couple of reports from Candlewood that it has been an excellent spring so far. All right, well, there you have it. I'm Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine, wishing you tight lines if you head out onto the water this weekend.